Hi, this is Lisa, and you are listening to I Love That Movie. This podcast is for movie lovers. It's not an unbiased opinion. It's not a straightforward review. It's just a couple people talking about a movie that they love. The format is each week I have a guest, and that guest and I discuss a movie that they love, something they're obsessed with, something they connect with. We'll talk about the plot, the director, and the actors, but we'll also talk about the personal connection my guest has with that movie. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, keep listening. Hey, this is Lisa, and if you want to catch up with me on Twitter, you can find me at ILTM Podcast. I'm also on Instagram at I Love That Movie Podcast, and we have a Patreon. The show is always free, but if you want to support us on there, you can. That's at patreon.com/I Love That Movie. And if you join us on there, you get a weekly bonus episode of everything else I'm watching. Movies, shows, etc. And I'd like to take a moment to thank my top patrons, and they are Chris Belga, Jeff Widman, Philip Barker, Michael Cross, and Josh Johnson. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe and rate the show. It does help new listeners find us. Well, I've got a returning guest on the show. I've got Nick Ward. Say hi, Nick.
Hello.
And if you hear tapping in the background, those are our dogs.
The pugs are also here.
We're trying to keep them quiet, but it's very challenging, if we're honest.
The more you try to keep them quiet, the louder they are.
Yeah.
They're tap dancing.
Yeah, they're excited too. Mm-hmm. Well, Nick, in case people haven't heard you on the show before, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, I'm Nick. I'm married to Lisa.
Yep.
And I'm always here when she's podcasting. And I've been roped into another episode.
So we're doing something a little bit different today. Usually I have a guest on. The guest picks a movie, and then we talk about that movie. I'm the guest. Today, I'm the guest.
I didn't get to choose anything.
Yeah, you don't get to choose. No, but today I'm gonna choose a movie. People always go, "Why don't you choose one?" Okay, well, here I go. Instead of a movie, we're doing a small, selection of shorts, and we're really only covering the first short out of the three. So without further ado, this is something I've talked about a lot on the show and on other podcasts. It's something I really enjoy, and it's called Magnetic Rose, which is one part of a collection called Memories. This was made in 1995. It's an anthology science fiction animated film by Katsuhiro Otomo. Yep, that's right, the Akira guy. And he was an executive producer and this is kind of based on 3 manga short stories. The first short is the one we're going to talk about, called Magnetic Rose, or Kanojo no Omoide. Hopefully I said that right. This is directed by Koji Morimoto, and Koji Morimoto is a Japanese anime director. Some of his works include being an animator on Akira. He did some shorts in Robot Carnival and The Animatrix, and he did the key animation in Kiki's Delivery Service, City Hunter, Fist of the North Star. You get it. He was a big deal. He's the co-founder of Studio 4C. So that's the director. And then this short story was written by Satoshi Kon. And I really feel like, you guys know I'm a huge fan of his. We've talked about Perfect Blue on here. I would like to talk about his other movies as well, if anybody ever wants to pick those. But this is a short that I think is the first thing of his I ever saw. Like I said, he didn't direct this, he just wrote it. But his presence is very felt in it, and I don't know. It's just it's a very small, I think it's 20 minutes. There's other shorts in this anthology too, but they just don't hold a candle to the first one. So we're going to talk mainly about the first one. So yeah, that's my little introduction. Also, I don't have a bunch of quick facts like I normally do. This is just going to be a quick one. In Magnetic Rose, the opera singer's lover is named Carlo Rambaldi. This is most likely, so this is a guess, a tribute to special effects creator Carlo Rambaldi, who was contributed to effects in Alien and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, among others. So
That I didn't know, and you can definitely see the alien influence in this film.
yeah, so let's kind of talk a little bit about it, our experience with it. When was the first time you saw it?
I want to say it was not the same time, but the same way. I originally saw it was just a fan made music video to like the house trance remix of the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, that's how I saw it too.
And it's actually a really good fan made video.
So for some of you that are a little younger, we're older anime fans, and when we used to go to anime conventions, let me just say they were a little scarce. This was way before like Crunchyroll, before Toonami, like before there was a lot of presence of like anime in American pop culture. So almost everything we saw was exclusively like, I'm just gonna say it, illegal, like
It was all
subs,
bootleg.
yeah, all bootleg, everything. Even the dealer room was bootleg
Yeah,
until
because you couldn't get this stuff easily back in the day.
yeah,
Especially not every title.
I think it's even pre like Funimation is when we were like a lot younger. And
Yeah.
one thing that they did a lot, and they don't really do this anymore, but I guess the closest thing would be like when people put animation to songs on like TikTok. Well, when we were younger, people used to have like full on competitions where they would edit, they called them A&Vs, or anime music videos. They would animate music videos, or not animate, they would edit anime to music videos.
Yeah, they're like super cuts of a show or a movie.
Yeah.
Like best parts. And they would usually kind of go with the song they were using.
Mm-hmm. And remember, like, music videos were a big deal back then.
No.
So, like, this was more popular back then. And so the way Nick and I saw it is we probably saw a contest where someone, like you said, took that song, put it to the short, and it was like, I remember seeing it and thinking, I have to figure out what that is.
I mean, it was like professional level. It was really
yeah.
good.
And so, like, I searched for it. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure the cut that I have is a legal copy of it, or that I now have it on DVD, but I think this was pre-DVD. I think it might have been a VHS tape. But I got it. I remember the first time I ever saw it, I was at my friend Kara's house, and we were watching it, and she happened to have that year this German exchange student that lived with her who was, like, kind of miserable at her house because her family was so conservative. They like didn't really do anything. So he came to America, I think, thinking he was going to party.
He's going to have some crazy, wild, fun American trip.
Yeah. And like that didn't happen at all. And he, spoke German. He spoke a little bit of English, but not a ton. I remember like we could communicate a little bit, but I think he struggled a little bit. So anyways, we were watching this without him. We didn't even tell him, like, hey, I want to watch this. I mean, that's how, like, disconnected
Rude.
he was. No, not on our part. We tried. First of all, we were much younger than him. But the other thing was he was just miserable there. So he doesn't hang out with us. We watch this. And then at the end, over our shoulder, we hear him go, oh, that was good. So he, like, again, I don't know if he pretended not to understand us. I mean, we were, like, dumb kids, and he was in high school. And I feel like we were a little bit younger, maybe 14 or something like that. He had zero interest in us. But anyway, it was really good. I remember being really impressed with it. It, like, exceeded my expectations of what the, music video showed, even though that was done really well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I guess we could talk a little bit about some of our favorite scenes. It's pretty short, so...
It's short, like you said earlier. It's about 20 minutes.
Yeah, you can find it on Tubi right now. We actually just rewatched it.
Yeah.
But I guess the gist of it is just that there's a distress call in space, and this spaceship that has like kind of a hodgepodge group of people that collect junk.
They're
right?
scrappers.
Yeah.
They collect junk, or if they don't collect anything valuable, I think they like have to destroy it for like they're just getting rid of trash in space essentially.
Yeah. And so they get this SOS call, and they go to it, and spookiness ensues. And it reminds me a little bit, like, especially when you get the big reveal at the end, it kind of reminds me of this one episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Gosh, this is so geeky. But it's that one that got overplayed all the time, the Casino Royale episode, or like the Hotel Royale or whatever it was called. It was like the kind of a James Bondy episode, right? And like
Yeah.
the very end, you find out that like these aliens were created this like fake holodeck type situation, and were like keeping this guy there. Well, they couldn't bring him back home, I think, and so they created this fake world for him, and then he just ended up living there so long he died. This is kind of reminds me of that a little bit. It's got some undertones I think that are similar, especially the visual of when you see
Yeah, because there's a
the
lot
person
of
at the very end.
yeah, there's a lot of holograms in it. Because apparently there's, I guess it's a ship. It's more like a
It's almost like
like
a
a
house, like a
space
floating
station
house.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, space station. So like,
but it's been there a really long time.
yeah, they don't say how long.
Yeah.
They at
they
least
do.
I feel like maybe like at least 100 years or something.
I think. Oh man, we just watched it, but I can't. I think it's the year 2097.
Yeah, so it's the
And
future for us, but it's like
they hint
in the past for the characters in the movie.
that the opera singer in it is from 2005, and that she pretty much, I guess she has a bunch of a trophy room, and one of the trophies was from 2030 something. So it's still like 60 plus years after, I guess, her latest thing or whatever. Yeah.
But the crew gets there, and they don't at first they don't like see anything, right? They just see the remnants of like a fancy place somebody lived, but they're not finding any people, but they keep getting the signal over and over that they're kind of searching for.
Yeah, they go into what looks like wreckage, and then the two main characters, Heinz and
Miguel. Yeah.
they go down this elevator, and that when it opens up, it's like an old mansion, not a spaceship at all.
Yeah.
It's really weird. They're like, what the hell?
But it looks really spooky, and I mean, I think that's what really drew me to this a lot. Is it kind of combined two things I like, which is like this kind of supernatural horror feeling,
Yeah.
but with sci-fi. And then the more it goes on, the more it's actually just sci-fi. It very much reminds me of like a Black Mirror episode, which makes a lot of sense because Satoshi Kon later did Paranoia Agent, which every episode of that is like Black Mirror,
Yeah. And
or
it,
like
it
the
kind of
Twilight
gets
Zone.
tied together towards the end.
Yeah, but yeah, so they go in this house, and they're stumbling upon things like she's got this big spread, or the person that lived there had this big spread, but then when Miguel goes to drink it,
Yeah, he takes a drink of wine,
gone.
and it's like old and spoiled, and
Yeah,
I think Heinz tries to turn a sink on, and it's just like sludge comes out of it.
and the sludge kind of looks like blood at times. But then there's also all these photos everywhere of this like really beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And you find out that she was like an opera singer, like you kind of alluded to earlier. And again, that kind of reminds me also of like the part in a horror movie where you're like looking at the microfiche or something. Like the guys back on the ship are kind of telling the guys there like what's going on, and they look up this woman and they're like, oh, she was like this big star, but then she lost her voice, and
Her husband died mysteriously.
her husband
and that's when
mysteriously
she disappeared.
dies. Yeah, she disappears from the limelight. She felt like the whole world had turned on her before that, and then her husband died, and then she goes to live with her memories, which is where, the title of the anthology series comes from. And so they're like, oh, okay. Miguel starts seeing this woman. Well, he's kind of taken by her, and he seems like a little bit of a playboy, right? Like you kind of get that he's a ladies' man or something.
I thought a really cool scene in it which was kind of a little scary, but also like, as you find out later, that the computer is essentially trying to draw people in.
Yeah.
And like her memory is the computer, but it's corrupted. But a really cool scene was he was looking at all these pictures of her, like you were saying a while ago. And in one of the pictures, it's Carlo with her.
Yeah.
And Miguel's always like, he's kind of like, oh, what a jerk.
Yeah, he's like, he didn't deserve her and stuff like that.
So I forget exactly how it goes, but he does something else. He looked around, and then the next time he walks by that picture, he is in the picture.
Yeah.
It's like the computer is changing the holograms to kind of get what it wants by tricking them.
Yeah, and it takes a really long time for you to figure out like what it is that this presence on the chip or house or whatever you want to call it wants.
Yeah, I mean, for being 20 minutes, it's pretty fast paced, but it is still drawn out really well.
Yeah. And then the other main character, Heinz, is like this German family man. In the beginning, I think we see a picture of his family.
Yeah, he's got a picture in his wallet.
And the more that he's on the ship, the more he starts to see something too. He starts to see almost like ghost. He sees like the first indication is he sees this creepy doll that's like a little music box.
Yeah.
And it's also alluding to what's going on, really.
Yeah.
But the doll like is twirling around and falls off of a shelf, and he goes to catch it, and it seems
breaks.
really traumatic to him, and at first we're like, why is that so disturbing? And like I said, there's a couple different levels to that doll, which I think, again, just the brilliance of what, in my opinion,
It's so
that
good what
Satoshi
they
Kon
pack
could
into
do.
just 20 minutes.
Yeah. Then later he starts to see like a more elaborate hallucination of his
house,
his wife, his kid, and we learn
like
a little bit more about
their
him.
dining room, like a birthday gift he gave her, because he gave her like this little astronaut costume, because he was, I mean, I guess in this sci-fi world he's kind of an astronaut, but more of like a scrapper.
Yeah, like he goes to space a lot. It's kind of like having a dad that's always traveling.
Yeah, like kind of like a truck driver.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think it would
like
be
that.
closer
He's
to
probably
that.
gone for a while at a time.
And you know, his kid and his mom miss him, and his wife, not his mom, miss him, and like, you know, you
His
can
mom
tell
might miss him
that
too.
we're learning a little bit more about him. But again, it feels like the more we get to know the ship and what's going on, it seems like this woman, you know, she holed herself up away in the ship, and it had technology to where it could create all these holograms, like you said, basically whatever she wanted, what she was feeling, thinking, and hoping for. And it starts to do that to Miguel and to Heinz. With Miguel, it sort of pulls him into the fantasy, because he's kind of a romantic too, I feel like, where he's into this like romance. You know, he keeps saying,
it figures out how to trick you.
Yeah, how to pull you in to give you what you want.
That's why Miguel it's giving them both different visions, and the hologram changes depending on who it's trying to lure in.
Yeah, it knows that Miguel just wants this pretty lady.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
But Heinz, it's like his family, and that there's something that he misses about it. And there's a ton of really amazing scenes, even though it's only 20 minutes. But suffice to say, we find out that Heinz actually lost his daughter. She fell off of a roof and died. And so the, you know, Presence picks up on this and tries to give her his daughter back, which I think was like, again, just like a really cool thing that played in. Now that little twirling doll that fell, it reminds us of the ship, because there's certain times when we see like under the facade of these holograms, sometimes it's like literally just a robot.
It's a robot, or like sometimes actually a corpse.
Yeah.
That it's kind of projecting a living person over.
Mm-hmm. And like we find out through Miguel's interactions with this woman, and in Heinz too, there's a part where the robot like tries to kill him with a fake knife, and we find out, okay, she killed her husband. I mean, we were all thinking it, right? Because it just seemed to be where this was going. But she killed him, and I think her emotions, I guess, like the Presence, I guess, fed off of that. And I think even when she's gone, it just keeps replaying this desire to like not be alone and to pull people into this fantasy. And maybe the machine needs people to feed off of in their consciousness or something, because it that's what it did. It sent out an SOS, pulled people in, and then pulls them into this like dark.
And that's a really cool thing about this, is we don't get all the answers. Like, we don't really know why it's doing it or even how, but this is what's happening in the story.
Yeah.
And it's done really well.
I think the way I interpret it personally is that she created these holograms, and then when she died, it just kept going. But because she was kind of an evil person, she killed her
Yeah.
husband. It keeps playing that dark fantasy out because she's like in a lot of ways the original programmer, because
Yeah.
it is designed after her imagination, and her imagination was screwed up. So it continues to be screwed up is how I kind of think of it. Now the hows and whys of how it creates stuff out of nothing, I don't know. It's really neat looking. That's about
Yeah,
all we can
like
say.
you said, the visuals are great, and it's. I mean, I personally think '95, mid '90s is like peak anime aesthetics.
Yeah,
It looks
1995 is when
amazing.
this came out. It's another good point. But Heinz kind of snaps out of it. There's a part where, again, the machine is kind of trying to give him what he wants. We're like, look, Emily could be alive again and not dead like she is
He
in real
was
life.
he was a lot harder to trick than Miguel,
Oh,
but
yeah, he's a little brighter.
yeah, there was. I think that's why the machine pulled out, or the computer or whatever pulled out all the stops, and it was like, you could have your daughter back, and it almost had him.
Yeah, and then he kind of really thinks about it. And he's like, she's gotta have
Oh,
to live. He says memories aren't real.
that's
And I
what
thought
it
that was a
is.
cool tagline too.
The scene where we find out his daughter fell off a roof, it pretty much materializes a house, and he's on the roof, and his wallet falls out, and this is the
Yeah.
wallet we've seen earlier. And so right before he's about to give in, he finds his wallet and sees the real picture in there,
Yeah.
and that's what snaps him out of it.
I think it makes him feel like, getting lost in this memory and wishing she was alive, it doesn't change the fact that he lost her.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of disrespectful to the real daughter that he lost.
Yeah.
It's like her life meant something to him, so he doesn't want to live in just a fantasy. And he says that. He's like, these are memories, they're not real. You can't, he rejects what the original person did, the opera singer did. He's like, I don't want to live in like a fantasy. I want to live in reality. So he tries to bust out. Now this is where we learn, and this is where the name Magnetic Rose comes from. There's some magnetic field it's emitting, and it's pulling things in and
Yeah.
shutting equipment down, right?
Yeah, it's like it's already. They're on this really large ship, and they have like these little pods that they can go and from place to place, and it's already destroyed their pod, so they're not getting off.
Yeah.
And it's starting to pull their ship, and their other two crewmates are still on the ship, and it's destroying the computers. It's pulling the ship apart.
There's a time where the people on the ship are like, "Oh, don't worry, like we'll get you out of there," and then it becomes
Yeah.
rapidly like because he goes after Miguel. Honestly, he could have gotten off there if he hadn't gone after Miguel.
But
he
Heinz
felt,
is a good guy.
Yeah, he goes after Miguel. Miguel can't tell that it's not real. He's totally won in by this. But yeah, eventually, the ship that they were on, like the crew blasts it to try to get away. But I don't even know if they actually get away. I think they end
No,
up.
it
sucks
destroys their
everything
ship,
in.
the Corona.
Yeah. It sucks everything in, and there's these really cool visuals of like the opera singer and like this sphere
Yeah.
singing while all this stuff is happening. It looks so neat. And then in the end, it's just like Hans floating in space, and he sees another little, I guess, hologram of like those rose petals in his helmet that he blows on, and they
Yeah.
move around. But
It's kind of like you don't know, is it a hologram still, or are they actually in there?
yeah, it's like, but that's pretty much it. We kind of covered all of it, but
Yeah, I mean, for like we said, for being a 20-minute short, there's so much in it. I mean,
yeah. And I would look up the music video too, because the music video is pretty cool. I'll kind of
it's like I said earlier, it's like feels like a professional, like legit music video.
yeah, and like this short I feel like could be a whole movie, but I love the length of
yeah.
it though.
Yeah, they
So
could
it's, like, kinda
definitely
hard.
stretch it out, but I think that might take something away from it.
Yeah, I think that the fact that it's so mysterious, like you said, that things aren't explained.
Yeah, if they made it longer, they would do a lot of extra explanation and stuff, and that's I know a lot of people want everything to be explained, but I'm fine with there being unanswered questions as long as the story's good.
Yeah, sometimes ambiguity is better. I think especially with horror.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
'cause
like-
once you know everything, it's not scary anymore.
Exactly, like leave something to be desired, something mysterious. We don't learn a whole lot about this woman or her world or
Or even
anything.
how the ship or I keep saying space station, but it's not really a space. It's just it's like this fake small planet kind of. They say
Yeah.
it's like asteroid sized.
Yeah, and we see her corpse like at one point.
At the very end, yeah.
At the very end, she's like holding a rose, and that's where I said that kind of reminded me of that Star Trek episode, because at the end
Yeah.
you see him like rotting, or turning to dust in his bed, and I just think it's cool the way they're able to blend those two aesthetics of like of horror with sci-fi, and I think again we keep saying it seems very influenced by Alien, which very much did the exact same thing. It was both, dark, suspenseful horror, but it was also science fiction, and I feel like this was like, oh, what if we did that but with like a haunted house, and I think it's really cool looking.
Some of the horror aspects, there's so many good scenes they're so quick. There's even some where there's like a big ballroom, and you see people, but then there's a split second where there's a scene where they're like just corpses everywhere. That kind of reminds me of like The Shining.
Yeah,
like they put
that's right. I forgot about
other
that scene.
like horror elements in there only for like a few seconds.
And I like the idea of like it at the very end, there isn't really anything supernatural actually happening. It is just like this evil computer. Like there's a part where Heinz is like, this, it's the computer. The computer's gone nuts.
Yeah.
But you're kind of like, I mean, is the computer evil? I mean, how could it be evil, right? Like I feel like what's evil was probably that original woman's.
That's just how it was designed to run.
It was designed after her desires, and her desires were bad. And so I don't know. I really like all of that. So I would definitely recommend watching it. Like I said, you can watch it for free on Tubi.
20 minutes, easy watch.
Yeah. And this was a short episode. I mean, that's pretty much all we have to say. You guys know that I was a huge fan of of Akira, and also of, of Toby's work. Satoshi Kon as well. And, rest in peace. Gone way too soon. So, yeah, I hope you guys check it out, and I'm always on this mission for the rest of my life to get people to watch this, because I think it's so great. Nick, thank you for coming on and watching and talking about it with me.
Sure,
and watching
it was fun.
With me. It was fun.
I feel like we watch this like every year or two anyways.
Yeah, we watch it a lot. So, Nick, where can people find you?
Pretty much my handle can be found at any of the social medias, Wardco Props, and some iteration of that. Yeah.
And you have a really cool Chainsaw Man costume you're working on right now.
I do. It's mostly done. I'm just putting more blood and guts on it, and it's kind of fun to make something look all beat up and gory that's really just a bunch of foam.
Yeah, y'all should go check that out. It's really cool. Well, thanks again, Nick, and hope to have you back soon.
Oh, I will be.